This is one of the more fun topics when debating buying real estate, a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. Dave Ramsey seems to think that 15-year mortgage is the only way to buy a house. I completely disagree, as I think everyone should buy a 30-year, and here's why.
Some folks in that business don't like me because I tell people not to buy a house until you're ready. Because when people buy a house when they're broke, it makes them broker.
I actually completely agree with Dave on this sentiment. You should not buy a house until you can afford it. But first, we must establish the premise for what affording a house actually is. So for me, I think a lot of Americans are actually cash poor. They're house poor, that's what you call it, cliche term. And essentially what that is, you're spending so much money on your housing. So you only have so much of after-tax income. And when a large percentage of that goes to your house, you are house poor. It's hard to save up and invest money when all of it's going towards your housing. So what he talks about affording it is, he's got his own terms, but for me, my idea of affording a house is when you can easily afford the debt service. That means you are very confident that you can cover your monthly payments for years. That means having a stable job, some type of stable income, or like me, I have a bunch of roommates. So as long as I have just a couple roommates, then my expenses are completely covered. So I'm good in that regard. I'm very confident that I can afford it.
Everyone ought to buy a house, and if you buy a house, it's going to make all your financial problems go away. The only way the little man can get ahead is buy a house he can't afford. It's just a bunch of crap. You shouldn't buy a house when you're broke.
I definitely agree with Dave again here. Buying a house you can't afford is a recipe for disaster. However, we disagree a little bit on when the right time is to purchase. But anyway, the first couple points I want to make about this is me and him share the same belief on the first couple steps for mastering personal finance. First, I believe you should get some type of stable job. This is a good income. Focus on that first. This is put a lot of time into learning skills so that you can get a stable job. Or if you're an entrepreneur, you want to run your own business, get in a situation where you have a very high confidence that you'll be able to, make your monthly payments, meaning you have a history of having stable income. Number two, this is definitely personal opinion, but I think everyone should focus on being frugal. And frugal does not mean just sitting inside and not doing anything fun. That means cutting out all unnecessary expenses. So first, you got the job, the stable job. Second, you cut all of your unnecessary expenses so that you can increase your monthly cash flow. And third, this is where you use that cash flow to then expand. This is where you start putting money into investments or saving up for a down payment, with the key being that this down payment will go towards a house that will reduce your expenses even more.
So I want everybody to get a house because I want everybody to get out of being broke. But when you buy a house and you're broke, all kinds of crap turns loose in your life.
He's definitely not lying. Home ownership can be expensive. Notice I said can be. There are a lot of repairs and maintenance expenses that come with owning a house. And sometimes, unfortunately, they come at the worst time. And if you look at it right now, there is a situation going on in America where a lot of people might be struggling to pay their mortgage. Maybe they got laid off, their hours got cut, or it's a temporary position where they're not making money. And unfortunately, that gets them tight on their expenses. And then all of a sudden, something might happen to the house. Your HVAC might go out, or your water heater needs to be replaced, or you need to replace the flooring. Anything can happen. And if you're really tight, it's going to be really hard to make those expenses go away.
Everybody should get a house because I want everybody to get away from being broke so they can afford a house. So get out of debt, get your emergency fund in place. But if you buy a house and you don't do that, Murphy will move in your spare bedroom. If you're in debt, you buy a house broke, he'll move in your spare bedroom. You know who Murphy is. If it can go wrong, it will.
He's basically referring to Murphy's Law here, which states that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Keep in mind that when you are going to get a mortgage, they have very strict guidelines and criteria for what it takes to actually apply and get qualified for a mortgage. Dave keeps talking about all these people who are broke buying homes. I'm not exactly sure what he means by that, because the only people who can qualify for mortgages nowadays are people that fit the criteria. And keep in mind that lenders are not in the real estate business. They do not want to own and sell, especially foreclosed homes. What they do is they lend money. So their goal is to lend to the best borrowers. They want the lowest risk possible. And now that they have million data points, they know what numbers to get at for the borrowers to be the best protected from foreclosure, because really they want you making payments. They want you to succeed. So when he keeps talking about people being broke buying homes, I'm not exactly sure what he means. I think this is just one of the ways that Dave likes to argue, where he brings up this idea of everyone else being broke and making stupid decisions. But if someone has a lot of credit, utilization, their credit cards are maxed, or they have really high car payments. This all goes into the criteria of buying a home, and lenders will see it and won't lend money. They will only lend to you if you meet their criteria.
He'll bring his 3 cousins, broke, desperate, and stupid, with him, and your hot water will go out the next week, and your roof will leak 3 days later, and then the heat and air will go down. Oh, and the sewer will stop up, or the septic tank will back up. I mean, you're going to find out the joys of home ownership when you move in a house broke.
These kinds of statements are why I dislike a lot of what Dave preaches. First, if you're a first-time home buyer, you're going to likely get a home warranty, which will help aid you in a time of need if there are some huge unnecessary expenses. That definitely doesn't mean that they're going to cover everything or everything is roses under a home warranty, but it'll certainly help you. Additionally, when you go buy a house, you're going to have a home inspection. And they certainly aren't going to find everything and be able to give you an exact timeline of when things will break. But the inspector will be a professional, and he's going to be able to look at the house, analyze it, and make notes of, hey, there's a little water damage here. We think the water here might be out. There's some damage on the roof. And this is stuff that you can, well, number one, you'll be aware of it. So going into owning the house, the first week, the water heater is not going to go out. But also, these are things that you can go back to the seller and let them know, hey, we noticed this during the inspection. Can you please have this fixed before closing? Or can you allocate the necessary funds so that we can fix it? And this happens all the time. It is very common. And what Dave really is doing in his argument is using an appear to fear fallacy, which is a fallacy in which a person attempts to create support for an idea by attempting to increase fear towards an alternative. And you can see how he uses that here. If you are broke, you're going to move into a home and all of a sudden all of this stuff goes wrong, as if you aren't broke, you just move into a home and nothing bad happens.
I don't yell at you if you don't, but I will yell at you if you violate this next one. Never buy a house on more than a 15-year mortgage.
This is definitely one of the dumbest statements I've ever heard in real estate. I really dislike how Dave deals in absolutes. There is absolutely no nuance to what he preaches. What's really interesting to me is that if he cares most about protecting your downside risk, which is what Dave is all about, he's all about risk mitigation, getting a 30-year mortgage would actually make way more sense than a 15-year. Because think about it like this, your 15-year mortgage is consistent. It is the same just like a 30-year mortgage is. But your 15-year is going to be more expensive than a 30-year. So if you want to be a Dave disciple and be all about mitigating risk and being safe, it would actually make more sense to get a 30-year mortgage and then pay down every month, pay a little bit extra so that you can have the house paid off in 15 years, but you have a lot less risk in the event that any month you are a little tight on finances and maybe it's a little more challenging to pay your monthly payment. So think about it like this. You have 2 people. One person gets the 15-year mortgage, okay? And the other person gets the 30-year mortgage. 15 years from today, both could have the payments gone, right? Person with the 15-year mortgage could have, they will have the mortgage paid off because that's the terms. The 30-year mortgage could have their mortgage paid off in 15 years as well because they can make extra payments. But the difference is that month to month, their risk is less because they owe less. And keep in mind that lenders don't care what mortgage you get. If you get the 15-year mortgage and you aren't able to make your payments, you're still gonna go and notice a default and potentially foreclosure if you can't come up to what you owe. So there's still risk in having the 15-year mortgage. They aren't any more lenient on it. So it's better to get the 30-year mortgage, make extra payments if you want to go that route, and lower your risk.
Don't buy a house on more than a 15-year mortgage, and never buy a house on a 15-year fixed rate where the payment is more than a fourth of your take-home pay.
I really dislike how Dave never seems to think outside the box. He basically has this box and he tries to slam everyone inside this box. You should not get a mortgage if you don't fit these extreme qualifications. But he never seems to think of all the humans out there that have different situations that he does. Think about it like this. There are so many situations. You could have people who buy small multifamilies. These are people with duplex, triplex, or quads. You can move into one unit, rent out the other units, and have all of your expenses covered. And in a lot of cities, you can actually find plenty of places that will cash flow. So sure, absolutely, their mortgage might be real tight with what they can afford, but you start adding the income of all the other units, and all of a sudden it's a very wise decision where they're living for free or even cash flowing. Also think about the people who buy houses to house hack. This is traditionally known as house hacking, where you get roommates. You buy a house with a few extra rooms, you get some roommates that cover all your expenses or greatly reduce your living expenses. This is an absolute asset building strategy. Additionally, there is another strategy where you can buy houses at a massive discount, especially if you can do the work yourself, or you can do what's called like a rehab flip project. If you flip and then buy yourself, you're getting a lot of equity. So there are so many different strategies that one can use to purchase a house.
Now you got to keep in mind, interest rates are what, 3%? You know, most of the time, interest rates have been 10, 12% in my working lifetime.
If you look at historical data on mortgage interest rates, you'll see that 10% was about the average when Dave began his working career in 1978. Those rates lasted until about 1990 and have really fallen ever since. So if you do the math, 12 out of his 42 working years have been when mortgage interest rates were above 10%, which equates to just under 30%. So he talks about how a majority of his working career has had 10% interest rates. That's definitely not true. In my opinion, mortgage rates are really irrelevant. Now, I mean, obviously they matter. Don't flame me in the comments like, oh my God, you're an idiot. No, here's why mortgage rates don't really matter. Because when mortgage rates were at their highest, purchase prices were way less. What really matters is the monthly payment towards your income. So if you think about it, or equivalently known as debt to income. So sure, interest rates might have been at 10% at one point, but houses were 1/4 the price they were today. So if the average American is making $3,000 a month, the average monthly payment might be $1,000 to a mortgage. It's irrelevant what the interest rate is because the housing prices are going to match it. All consumers really care about is that monthly payment. The average consumer makes, $4,000 a month, therefore they want to spend $1,000 to $1,300 a month in their mortgage. In conclusion, essentially, I think it is not wise to get a 15-year mortgage. For me personally, I like protecting my downside risk. I don't like the idea of being stuck with a 15-year mortgage, which is a higher payment. I also don't think it's smart at all to pay down your interest. I mean, think about it. Right now, you can get an interest rate of 3-4%. This is historically low. It would make no sense to pay it down, especially if you believe in the American economy and believe that inflation of 2 to 3% is likely to happen. That means you're basically paying down an interest rate at 0%. It makes absolutely no sense. Something that I do not think is wise. Now, the idea of paying down your mortgage, some people get a lot of benefit and value out of that because they like the idea of living mortgage free. Sure, no need to argue that. Why not just get a 30-year mortgage where you have way less risk and then make extra payments every year? Because with the lower monthly payments, you're going to have extra surplus cash flow. So you can use that to invest it. You can use it to save up for a rainy day. You could use it to protect yourself in case there's a worldwide pandemic and you might lose your job. All these things are true and they happen in real life to real people. So why not lower your risk? And if you feel up to it, put some extra money towards your mortgage. And really, here's the best strategy for that, in my opinion, is save up a bunch of cash. And when you reach the intersection of having enough cash to make one lump sum to pay off your mortgage in full, if you want to follow the path of being mortgage free, in my opinion, that would be the best move. You have every risk covered. You have so much cash, emergency fund, a rainy day fund, all that stuff covered. And then when you want to go mortgage free, you just make the one transfer over to your bank. That is the video today. I hope you enjoyed it. I have nothing wrong against Dave. He's a smart dude. However, I dislike some of the stuff he preaches. Don't get a 15-year mortgage. It makes no sense. If you disagree, I would absolutely love to hear from you because there might be some perspectives that I have not considered. So if you'd like to share why a 15-year works for you, please share below. Or if you think this video is great and I am the smartest guy alive, you can also compliment me as well. I would love it. Just kidding. But thanks for watching.